Secretary has confirmed a rise in maximum university tuition fees in England next year. That increase in line with inflation to more than £9,500. Bridget Phillipson's told LBC it's about making sure universities are sustainable in the future.
What we're setting out today is that first step around the reform that we want to drive, but there is much more that we need to do. I wouldn't say, for one moment that this is the end in terms of what's required, but it was a necessary step to make sure that our universities are put on a more sustainable footing.
Flooding at Barcelona airports disrupting flights affecting thousands of UK passengers. A further 2,500 soldiers have been sent to eastern Spain to support the clean-up. Kamala Harris has appeared at a rally on the final day of campaigning in the US election. She's in Pennsylvania while Donald Trump's travelling to North Carolina and Michigan. Stuart Hogg, the former captain of Scotland's rugby union team, has admitted a charge of domestic abuse against his estranged wife. A court heard he used to track her whereabouts and bombarded her with texts. And Tory leadership runner-up Robert Jenrick's been appointed Shadow Justice Secretary in Kemi Badenoch's team. He joins Dame Priti Patel, who's become Shadow Foreign Secretary, and Mel Stride, who's been appointed as Shadow Chancellor. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed up 7 points, 81.84. The pound buys $1.29 and €1.18. LBC weather, some light showers in the far north tonight. Mist and fog possible in places and a low of 2 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets.
America Decides on LBC.
Do we believe in the promise of America?
I don't have a lot of respect for her, and I think she'll be a terrible president.
He's been one of the most polarizing figures in recent history.
We're going to have the largest deportation in the history of our country.
Will it be the return of President Trump?
Joe Biden became mentally impaired. Kamala was born that way.
I will proudly put my record against his.
Or will Vice President Kamala Harris claim the White House?
We are not a vessel for the schemes of wannabe dictators.
Join me, Sheila Fogarty and John Sopel from 10 tomorrow night as America Decides.
Kamala, you're fired.
Stay with us for the best analysis throughout the night.
And as results continue to come in, join me, Nick Ferrari, live from 5 a.m. in Washington, D.C. America Decides. Tomorrow from 10 p.m. This is LBC. This is LBC. From Global. Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question. With Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 8:02. Welcome to Monday's Cross Question. Aren't we all getting excited about this election tomorrow? I know I am. I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see what happens. I can't call it. I think anybody who pretends that they know what's going to happen is either lying or stupid. None of our panel will fall into that morass tonight, I'm sure. Let me introduce them to you. To my left, we have Jennifer Ewing, spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK. Next to her, Lord Kim Darroch, former UK ambassador to the United States. To my right, Zoe Strimpel, columnist for the Sunday Telegraph, who grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. And to her right, John Scardino, making his debut on the programme, UK Vice Chair of Democrats Abroad. They are here to answer your questions. I do predominantly want questions on the American election, but of course, you set the agenda, ask anything you like. And do watch us on Global Player.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Let's go to our first caller. It's James in Chelsea. Hello, James.
Hi, good evening, Iain. Good evening, panel. My question, very short, very sweet. What will be the reaction from Trump if he loses again, considering what happened last time?
Jennifer Ewing from Republicans Overseas UK. Does this depend on... let's assume that he's lost. I'm not making that assumption, but for the purposes of the question, let's assume he loses. Does it matter if he loses overwhelmingly, so what his reaction might be, or if it is quite narrow?
So that's a great question. And one of the things I've been talking about is obviously I want him to win, right? I am biased. But if he doesn't win, I hope he loses by a landslide. So it is decisive. But I think what's created here is not just Trump, but it's the whole movement he's created. I think we've moved away from a party being this sort of uniparty kind of neocons to this much more America first party, which you're seeing, with the involvement of J.D. Vance, with obviously some former Democrats, Bobby Kennedy Jr., former Democrat royalty, Tulsi Gabbard, also a former Democrat, Elon Musk, one of the great inventors. So it's a whole new Republican Party. And I think if he loses, he will pass the mantle on to this new generation of Republicans.
You say it's obvious that you want him to win. Is it obvious? Because I know quite a few Republicans who don't want him to win.
So I believe that I did say I wanted him to win, and I am here as a spokesperson for Republicans overseas. So I just didn't want to hide my bias, shall we say.
I think
now it's obvious.
We can understand that. John Scardino, you obviously have a bias in the other direction. What do you say to James's question?
Well, I think it's clear that if we look at 2020, Trump will probably come out on the election night by about 9 p.m. if he waits that long and claim victory, no matter what the results are. It usually takes several days after the election to actually have a formal response when everything's been properly tallied, which was the case in 2020. It took about 4 days after Election Day before Biden was officially declared. Now, obviously, since then, Trump has claimed almost every single day since 2020 that he didn't lose that. So I expect no matter what the results, that the candidate himself will probably say that he won. But I will be surprised to see if there's a great movement to try to deny that.
Even if he loses by a considerable margin. I mean, there will be people who will not accept that he's lost, come what may, even if it could be. I mean, I don't think it will be a landslide, but if it were a landslide, there will still be people saying, "Oh, well, it's the mainstream media's fault, or the ballot machines were all wrong, or whatever." There will always be some excuse, won't there?
He has been on a campaign ever since 2020, ever since he lost in 2020, to deny the results of that election and to say that he did in fact win, and he has been on this drumbeat ever since then. So I can see how there are some followers out there who believe that, and certainly there were even lawyers who took up the cause and tried to claim that that election was not fairly won, and they have all been either sanctioned or disbarred in one way or another. Rudy Giuliani, his own lawyer, has been prevented from practicing law anymore in the District of Columbia. Has faced a very, very heavy multi-million-dollar fine for the lies and
what a difference 20 years make, eh? Wasn't he known as America's mayor after 9/11, and he could be a totally different person.
Took the wrong turn somewhere.
Kim Darroch.
I mean, I think it would be great if there is a landslide, or in any circumstances, if Trump were to say gracefully that he accepted defeat. It seems a real stretch to me to imagine that, not least because on the campaign trail he said things which have come close to implying that the only legal and fair election is one he wins. So it's quite a stretch to think that he would actually accept defeat. And I think whatever he says almost is quite likely that there are going to be demonstrations and some unrest on the streets, just because people are, and this is such a pivotal election, it's so close and people are so wound up about it. So you have to worry about security in American cities in the immediate aftermath of a Trump defeat. But, let's see how it unfolds.
Zoe Strimpel.
Well, I think Jennifer got the closest to it, which is that Trump is only one part of this, and if he loses, and obviously if it's a close call, then it's going to be even more extreme. But he has quite the kind of fan base and quite the people who are there kind of as his sort of armies, so to speak. And one of them, as you mentioned, Elon Musk, runs this enormous social media platform. So I think we can expect to see things getting really out of control, but not necessarily because of Trump himself, but because of what will happen among his supporters. I mean, I think we have to remember that there's been 4 years since the so-called stolen election, in which the internet has been interneting away, conspiracy theories have been conspiracying away. There are a lot of weapons in America. We've seen various kinds of unrest in the last 4 to 8 years that you just didn't. I don't recall seeing in the obviously previously America has a history of unrest, but in my childhood, the kinds of things that have sent people to the street are just completely novel. So I'm actually quite frightened of a close call, and as I say, it's because of the people that will be mobilized as much as Trump.
If I could just follow up on that, it's one of the things I think that is a factor somewhat countering that idea is, a lot of the people that were involved in the denial of the results of 2020 have faced severe punishments. I mean, the protesters who attacked the Capitol, a lot of them are serving serious prison time. The lawyers that I mentioned to you who carried forward the claims of fraud and were shown to have been lying, they've been disbarred and they've been sanctioned by professional bodies and prevented from practicing what they were trained to do. So, people see these punishments, and I think it has had something of a dampening effect. There may be protests, but I'm hoping that they will be a little bit more civil and peaceful.
Kim, you became ambassador, I think, January 2016, so you saw the whole campaign going up to November 2016. What differences do you notice in candidate Trump from then and candidate Trump this time?
He was a phenomenon in those days because he had a huge amount of energy. He had never served a day in any public office, and he was running for the most powerful office on the planet. He was an extraordinary campaign. He just destroyed the rest of the Republican primary field very quickly within 2 or 3 months, and they thought it was one of the strongest fields that ever assembled. And I remember being at a...
There's about 20 of them, weren't there?
Yeah, and I remember being at a lunch with Washington political pundits in about February 2016, and they said, Trump, it's never going to happen. He's never going to be the nominee, but isn't he doing well at the moment? Isn't that interesting? So a lot of people were very wrong about Donald Trump in 2016, and he fought an extraordinary campaign. I'm not a fan, but you have to say it was extraordinary to come from nowhere and to win the way he did. I think he then was a pretty unsuccessful president. That's why he lost in 2020. But as a campaigner, he was a force of nature, and he basically blew Hillary Clinton away.
And what differences do you notice now?
I think now, look, it's 8 years on, Ian, and I don't think he's the man he was then. And, he rambles on, and, his speeches have become increasingly disconnected and sort of streams of consciousness. He doesn't look like he has the energy that he had in 2016. He looks older. His voice is a little bit weaker. He still has a magnetism that is fairly unique amongst politicians, but he shows his age, not as much as Joe Biden did, but he shows his age, I think.
I think the biggest difference in the campaigns is this one is a lot more positive. A lot of the last one, yes.
I must have missed that.
Have you seen him in McDonald's? Have you seen him in the garbage truck? Have you seen him just out there talking to the average people?
I saw him struggling to get into the garbage truck.
Okay, fine. That's the one thing about the media is we all see different clips, right? So hopefully you've got to be watching things that you disagree with, that you agree with, so we don't live in an echo chamber. But there is no doubt that this time around he didn't expect, I think you just said that, that other people didn't expect him to win. He didn't expect to win in 2016, so he wasn't organized. This time he is. He's got a great team behind him. He's taking advice from the right people. And I'm sorry, but the campaign it's funny. He's likable.
Does he take advice, really?
Yeah, I think he does. And one of the great things about him is he's not taking advice necessarily from the so-called experts, which I think I would argue have failed us greatly over the last 4 years, these experts and institutions. But he will take advice. J.D. Vance, his vice president pick, tells this great story on Joe Rogan where he says, Donald Trump was asking one of the caddies at the golf course or one of the doormen at one of his hotels, hey, who do you think I should pick? And that's what this is all about. It's this realignment of politics that we're having in the United States right now, where the Republican Party it's a populist movement versus the sort of old school forever war, big institutions control. And the other thing is censorship. It's a huge deal this time around. We know, thanks to the Twitter files being revealed, that the 2020 election was one of the most censored events in modern history. We know whether it's the Hunter Biden laptop, whether it was the Russia hoax, all of these things are now proven to be untrue. Would they have won the election in Trump's favor? I don't know. But you can't say that that's not interference in some way. And this time we don't have that.
Now, Alan has what I think is a compliment.
Okay.
He says, congratulations, you've got Joan Rivers on the show.
Oh.
When he said that, I think there is a similarity in your voice and Joan
really?
Rivers. Yeah.
I think she's fantastic.
Well,
she was fantastic.
Well, thank goodness you took it as a compliment.
Yeah, no, I do. Thank you so much. No, I think she was quite funny and she's a character, so thank you.
Well, we'll have more from Joan in just a moment with some more questions. 0345 6060 973. You're listening to LBC. It's Cross Question at 8:15.
This is LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
17 minutes past 8. John Scardino is UK Vice Chair of Democrats Abroad. Zoe Strimpel, columnist for the Sunday Telegraph. Jennifer Ewing, spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK. And Lord Kim Darroch, former UK Ambassador to the United States. Now, we have just to follow up on something that you said, Jennifer. If Donald Trump loses, do you think Trumpism would be all over, or can it outlast Trump the man?
No, it absolutely outlasts Trump the man, and I think we've seen that with the people he surrounded himself by. It's a team, and again, it's a newer alignment of the Republican Party, and it is looking a little more inward. It doesn't mean we're isolationist, but if you look at the two biggest voting issues, the economy and inflation, and then, of course, the crisis we have at the southern border, I think people are really wanting to take care of our own country first. And you know what they say, if you need to look after others, you've got to put your own oxygen mask on first. We've got a $36 trillion deficit. We cannot continue to spend and print money the way we have been doing.
But who's I listening to today, and they reckon that if Donald Trump becomes president, he would double the deficit to 6 or 7 trillion.
Well, they're saying Elon's in talks with Ron Paul, the great libertarian, which of course has all the crypto guys excited, 50 million crypto holders, by the way, in the United States of America. So a lot of these low propensity voters love this idea that they're bringing on more libertarians who will question the feds printing this money. We can't keep spending the way we're doing. And I agree, Trump did spend too much, but not as much as Harris and Biden.
OK, let's go to a text question from Gordon in Hampstead. If Ronald Reagan was offering It's Morning Again in America as part of his election campaign in 1984, then what are Trump and Harris offering in 2024? Zoe?
Well, they're both offering their own versions of making America great again, obviously. The problem is that the more they say that that's what they're doing, the more dystopian it all feels, I think, on both sides. So it's actually quite unclear. I mean, I suppose, Jennifer's actually said quite specifically that there is, obviously a realignment on the right. There's a sort of populist thing. There's I think that the isolationism is worrying. The kind of idea that we shouldn't be bailing out people abroad because it doesn't affect us directly, which is really a really dangerous idea, I think. But it seems like, as is the nature of politics increasingly these days, as it's kind of hashed out in the free West, so to speak, it's not really clear what actually is being offered. It ends up being to do with sort of bubbles of speech and buzzwords and things that it's actually unclear. So I really have no idea, especially on the Democrat side. I think everyone's a little bit unclear on what actual policies would be being offered. And the vision does seem to be save yourself from Trump. So that would be that vision, and bring restore some degree of basic restore abortion rights in various states, maybe at the federal level for the Harris campaign. But is there anything positive and sunny that either one is offering? No, most people feel scared. Actually, the front page of the New York Times today is
which
about
is why I think it's
scared.
a really good question, because if I think back to that 1984 campaign, I mean, on Reagan's side, it was virtually all positive stuff. I mean, you can just by. I mean, people.
But the thing is, you can offer positive stuff, and that both of these guys, Harris is doing that, Walter is doing that, Trump is doing that. But nobody at this point. We are very jaded. We are very, very cynical. We've lived through politics, through social media, politics through the internet, politics through various forms of language. Nobody actually really thinks that whatever is being said is going to translate in any reliable way into reality. These are much more cynical times.
John, looking at it from Kamala Harris's point of view, she had a great convention. That was very optimistic, but she seems to have gone down a bit of a rabbit hole since then, and has sort of started trying to play Trump at his own game, calling him a fascist, for example. And you think, well, this whole thing of joy, which she was going on about at the convention, seems to have been forgotten.
I would disagree with that. I think she's been offering some very specific economic policies. I mean, she calls it creating the opportunity economy. Not everybody was born with $400 million in their pocket the way that Donald Trump was, given that from his father to start his own business. So what she's trying to create is opportunity for people who don't have that kind of thing. If they're starting out a new business, they get to deduct more of their initial startup costs. So she's trying to increase the number of entrepreneurs and create more competition, boost the economy.
Well, that's ridiculous to say to everybody starting up a business, I'm handing you $50,000. That's utterly ridiculous.
No, it's not there. That's not the way that it works. It says if you have startup expenses, you may deduct, instead of deducting now, the limit I think is $5,000 or $10,000. She wants to raise that deduction to $50,000. So it's not saying here's a check for $50,000. It's saying if you are creating a business and you have legitimate expenses in creating that business, you may deduct some of that from your income taxes so that your business might have a more successful opportunity.
But sorry to interrupt, but hasn't her economic plans been clouded by this use of the word equity, which has really put people off, including me? Because instead of it being about equality of opportunity, she specifically went out and said, no, we're going to have to basically, this idea of equity is actually about various forms of total redistribution so that we all end up in the same place, is what she said. She literally said end up in the same place. And of course that raises eyebrows because hang on, there is no guarantee you end up in the same place. And how expensive is that project? And how much is that going to involve taking from people who've done well to give to people who match a certain identity group that is deemed marginalized? That really, for me, was the moment I was like, I think I might have trouble with her economic vision if it's under this equity headline.
Zoe, I think that's an interesting point of view, but I would disagree with it because I think that the things that she's offering are not to a specific group. For example, when she says, I want to help renters and home buyers by providing some help with the initial down payment, for example, or more importantly, I want to take the $6,000 tax credit that was in place for a while that she would like to renew so that if you have a newborn child, you take $6,000 credit off of your income tax, which is a big boon for young families. So those are things that apply to, that's a universal thing. That doesn't apply to any one segment of the population.
But as someone who's actually, very far, you understand Kamala almost certainly better than any of us. Can you translate what she means really? Is that what equity means in practice, do you think?
Forgive me, I haven't heard that phrase used in that way, so I apologize. Jennifer would say I'm reading.
It's been used.
I'm reading the wrong. I'm reading the wrong media.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, John. I told you to broaden your range of media.
I have to accept that that's the case. So.
Kim,
I mean, Trump is just very dark and very dystopian, and it reminds me of his inauguration speech in 2016 when he talked about empty factories littering the American landscape like tombstones. He's not really moved on for that. Maybe he's even a bit darker than he was then. Harris, I don't know, they're sort of trying to cover all the bases. So she is, on the one hand, there's quite a lot of hope, and there's been some more hope in the last 24 hours. But then she's also, Trump is a fascist, and she is trying to reassure the right by saying she'll be solid on guns and that she should be tough on the border, and no way are any of them free traders, which is kind of disappointing, but can't find a free trader anywhere in America now. So I think that message is becoming a little bit... There's too much in there. It's not really clear. There's not a single point that she's banging on. And on all of them, like on economic policy, seem to me to be spending vast sums of money with no idea on how to raise it.
Jennifer, it is true to say that most of Donald Trump's campaign, or what we see reported at any rate, is very negative. It's sort of finding enemies and it's very negative against his opponent. Now, okay, you always have to be negative against your opponent to some degree, but you can't imagine Trump doing what Reagan did in that wonderful campaign commercial this morning in America. You just can't. It's not him, is it?
So, first of all, we'd all like to go back to the days where we have Reagan. And as much as I'm up here supporting Donald Trump, I too wish we had different candidates than we have today, right? But we are where we are. You play the hand you're dealt, right? So I think Trump, his policies, his team, far better than Kamala Harris, who was, until about 2 months ago, the most unpopular vice president since Spiro Agnew, until one weekend they pushed Joe Biden off the cliff, and then now she's the greatest thing, and the media runs with that. But that aside, I invite you to watch something that came out today. It was the closing ads for both campaigns, and somebody, I think it was Frank Luntz, that big, the pollster, the quite famous pollster, who is no lover of Donald Trump, by the way. He put the two ads on his Twitter and said, put in the comments in one sentence, what do you think? I invite anybody to watch both of those and tell me you do not feel hopeful about the team Trump has surrounded himself. This whole idea with Bobby Kennedy and Nicole Shanahan
if Bobby Kennedy is the best that you can come up with, I mean, really.
Well, no, please hear me out.
He's mad.
Look, please
hear. He's a conspiracy theorist.
Okay,
please. He's deranged.
Look, conspiracy theorists are just, the new spoiler alerts. So let me see one thing that he is talking about with when he was running vice president candidate Nicole Shanahan is something called Make America Healthy Again. They're talking about
banning COVID vaccines.
Well, no, they're not banning any vaccines.
Well, that's what Kennedy wanted to do.
Okay, please, Ian. What they are talking about is they're talking about
taking fluoride out of the water.
Yes, and
I mean, seriously.
Okay, listen, but they're
barking mad.
Okay, do you want me to finish this sentence or not? Like, what he is talking about is a lot of the chemicals and foods that are in what our children eat, and then there's a vicious cycle between the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry that then says your kids are sick, we've got chronic disease in our country, and here's a drug to fix it. What is so wrong about talking about that? And if what he's saying is disproven, then great, let's debate it. But
you
it's effective with a lot of mothers.
Should be taken out of
water.
Well,
look, I have great teeth because fluoride was put in the water of America, and I don't think it's put in the water in the UK, is it?
It is, yes.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay, well, I don't know. Maybe it's something else. But
you're reading the wrong material.
Reading the wrong material, John. Sorry, but no, look, I think between just the team he's assembled, I think there's a lot of positivity around there. I really,
you need to come up
do.
with someone better than Bobby Kennedy, I'm afraid. Right, Bradley is in Wincanton in Somerset. Hello, Bradley.
Hi, Ian. Hi, panel.
Hi, what would you like to ask?
Yeah, so Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton back in 2016, and now he's up against Kamala Harris. Do you think that Americans could be seen as sexist if he wins this one? That they can't stand the thought of having a female president? Because, let's face it, when was the last female president? There wasn't one.
Well, no, it's not for me to answer the question. Yeah. Let's go to Kim.
Me? Let's go to the chicks.
No,
we've got to go little chicks.
So you can react to what the men say.
Oh, okay.
Let me tell you how it is.
You tell me how it is.
You're going to mansplain us here.
Yeah, please tell me how it is.
I think it looks strange that America has never had a female president, honestly, and I think it would be a great thing if they did. This is not about Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton or any of them. I think it should be a good thing if that happened. I'm not close enough to the American voting public to know whether there is an element of misogyny in the way that Hillary Clinton lost and in the way that Kamala Harris, if she loses, will lose. But I do think it's about time that there was a female American president. I think it looks really outlandish now in the modern world that there hasn't been one.
But I don't think it can be said to be about optics. I mean, this reflects definitely sexism. I mean, Hillary Clinton, it's not a mystery that the kind of terminology in which she was disparaged was deeply misogynistic, explicitly so. And when you look at, like, the kinds of communities that flourish in various, political communities, they are, the incels, all those, the manosphere, all these ones, a lot of them emanate from America. It's a very, very, very sexist country on some levels. And I think that's reflected in these kind of, these broad reservations about having a woman. That said, America also has, incredibly successful women. It's a much more kind of go-get-em society on a more local level. But I absolutely 100% think that's sexism, not wanting a woman president, is a huge part of it. That was huge for Hillary Clinton, the biggest thing. But it's a shame that with Kamala, she is a disappointing candidate, and therefore it's very hard to tell what's going on, because actually it's a real shame that we have a candidate that appears, to be vacuous to many, to have trouble articulating herself, word salad and so on.
But Hillary Clinton's problem was that she could articulate herself and people didn't like her.
Yeah. So they didn't, but it's the old thing, isn't it, Ian? The reasons people don't like women are the things that you don't even notice.
It's often the women that don't like the women. I mean, you're talking as if it's the men that are being misogynistic. I'm not saying it. I didn't say that. I think that there's obviously leading the charge of the most problematic forms of sexism or men. Those are the ones that threaten and carry out violence against women. But and actually, unfortunately, there's all sorts of interesting gender things going on here. I happen to be fairly worried about the direction of travel of young women voters who seem to be going not just sensible left, but far left, with really lunatic ideas about, like, progressive politics, which could end up propelling Kamala into power. Sure. But yes, sexism is a thing.
I think it's a great question from your caller. Look, two things very quickly. Number one, this particular candidate has been convicted in a court of law of being a sexual abuser. So that's number one right there. The second thing, I wanted to come back to what Jennifer said earlier about this being a more positive campaign. And I just have to say, for all of us who watched any of the Madison Square Garden rally, that was a festival of hatred, racial abuse, misogyny, and I'm just on and on and on, and outpouring. And as some Republican women commentators that I've seen have said, didn't they have any women who were involved in the production of this event? They could have steered them away from this. If this is a candidate who's trying to reach out to women, that's what you've got. And even today, even since then, he comes on to his rallies, his entry song that I heard recently, I'm sure he uses several, but one of the entry songs that he comes on to is It's a Man's World. I mean, you're sending all the wrong messages, I think, if you're trying to reach out to women and say, as he did, I want to be the protector of women, whether they like it or not.
Do you like it or not?
So, look, I mean, we'll go back to the MSG convention in a moment. But first of all, I would love for there to be a woman president one day. I really would. Unfortunately, Hillary Clinton was a terrible candidate, and Kamala Harris is even worse, okay? Give me Tulsi Gabbard, give me Nicole Shanahan. These are modern women. Can't wait to vote for them one day. However, I will not be voting for them because of their immutable characteristics. I will not be voting for them because of the body parts that they happen to be born with, or the color that they were born with. Like, what are we reducing ourselves when it's all these identity politics? It should be on the policies. That's what we vote on. And as soon as there is a good female candidate with good policies, I am sure, whether it's left or right, I am certain we will see her do incredibly well. But we haven't seen that yet.
See, I remember the days when I thought Elizabeth Dole would make a great president.
Well, Nikki Haley wasn't bad. I mean, what happened there?
Well,
that was another example.
Well, you know what, Zoe, you're right. And I was having dinner with some very good friends of mine from California in town, and they were Clinton Democrats while my parents were Reagan Republicans. And so we sort of steer clear of some of this stuff. But they said to me, we love Nikki Haley. That was the problem. All of the Democrats love Nikki Haley. And like I referred to earlier, this new realignment of the Republican Party. We want out of these forever forever wars. She will, she's signing bombs that are going off.
But that's a great thing that she wanted to get Democrats on board. That's how you win elections. That's how Reagan won in 1980.
Yeah, but that's not the way the party is going.
But when you say forever wars, you mean Russia?
Yeah,
specifically that we should. So exactly. So not helping Ukraine, letting Russia win.
Well, I'd love to know what winning in Ukraine looks like. The Democrats nor has anybody else
means the
been
Russians
able to
getting out of Ukraine.
Well,
pushing them out, giving them enough weaponry to repel the Russians.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, it won't if Donald Trump gets in, will it?
Well, let's not forget,
the
only president of the last four that Vladimir Putin did not invade another country in was Donald Trump. He invaded Georgia under Bush. He invaded Ukraine under Obama and invaded again under Biden. And Donald Trump in 2017 gave the javelins to the Ukrainians to defend themselves. And Obama was giving blankets.
Let's hope he gives a few more if he becomes president.
No more forever wars.
OK, we will have more questions to our panel in just a moment. It's 8:35, news headlines on LBC with Darroch Jackson.
For the first time in 8 years, maximum university tuition fees will go up from April. The Education Secretary says they will increase in line with inflation. More soldiers have been sent to eastern Spain as a focus for clear-up from flash flooding moves to underground garages and car parks. In Barcelona, flights are being diverted due to heavy rainfall at the city's airport. And investigations continuing following the discovery of a body on the tracks at a London Underground station. 31-year-old Sarah Cunningham was last seen in the early hours of Saturday morning in Camden. LBC weather, some light showers in the far north tonight, mist and fog possible in places, and a low of 2 degrees.
They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets.
America Decides on LBC.
Do we believe in the promise of America?
I don't have a lot of respect for her, and I think she'll be a terrible president.
He's been one of the most polarizing figures in recent history.
We're going to have the largest deportation in the history of our country.
Will it be the return of President Trump?
Joe Biden became mentally impaired. Kamala was born that way.
I will proudly put my record against his.
Or will Vice President Kamala Harris claim the White House?
We are not a vessel for the schemes of wannabe dictators.
Join me, Sheila Fogarty and John Sopel from 10 tomorrow night as America Decides.
Kamala, you're fired.
Stay with us for the best analysis throughout the night.
And as results continue to come in, join me, Nick Ferrari, live from 5 a.m. in Washington, D.C. America Decides. Tomorrow from 10 p.m. This is LBC.
Wired.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
the way that...
8:39 on LBC. We have John Scardino with us from Democrats Abroad, UK, Jennifer Ewing, spokesperson for Republicans Overseas, UK, Lord Kim Darroch, and Zoe Strimpel, columnist for the Sunday Telegraph. Jay is in Luton. Hello, Jay.
Hello, good evening. Yeah, my question is, we had already run-ins with Trump in regards to what's it called, Keir Starmer's. He didn't like Keir Starmer sending a Labour representative to United States. And who's going to be the best president for us? Or are we going to be back in the queue once again?
It's a really interesting question, isn't it? We hear a lot about this much vaunted special relationship. Sometimes it feels more special than others. Kim Darroch, you've got a bit of experience with this, haven't you?
A little bit. Look, obviously, whoever the Americans vote for, we will have to do our best with whoever wins to have a good, productive relationship and to keep all the main elements of the UK-US relationship going as well as possible. You have to say, though, that there are aspects of the Trump foreign policy that are pretty worrying. And just let me quickly name three of them. One, first of all, he's going to leave the Paris climate change deal. And if America is not part of the international effort to deliver net zero by 2050, there is even less chance than there is at the moment of us making it. And that's, just look at the impact of climate change around the world. So that's a bad thing. Second, he's talking about introducing between 10 and 20% tariffs, trade tariffs on all imports into America. He says this a lot. He says he loves tariffs. Plus 60 to 100% tariffs on China. That's a trade war guaranteed. The EU will retaliate, China will retaliate, and that will damage the whole global economy. Third, on Ukraine, there's a policy that Trump is proposing basically about stopping arms to Ukraine and somehow encouraging Putin and Zelensky to do a deal that feels to me like realism, like appeasement dressed up as realism, and basically would leave Ukraine losing a big chunk of its territory. And it would leave the West as a whole, having spent $250 billion supporting Ukraine, with a big, big disaster.
John Scardino, do you think... I assume you do think that Kamala Harris would be better for the relationship with Britain, but on what evidence would there be to sort of put that as a thesis?
Well, I think she's been strong in expressing her solidarity with our allies in a way that Donald Trump certainly isn't. I think Donald Trump certainly cares more about his own power than he does about any involvement with allies. But I have to be a little bit careful here because the organization that I represent, Democrats Abroad, is officially part of the Democratic Party. And as part of the party, we're very restricted in the things that we can talk about when it comes to foreign affairs. So I can't really talk about the politics of the UK or UK's relationships with the US. But what I can say, and this is one of the things that differentiates...
Why on earth not?
Because we are a party organization, and we feel that things like foreign affairs are left up to the State Department and the Secretary of State and to the embassy.
How quaint.
well, it is. That's just the way that it is. And we do have members that are in all kinds of countries. We're in over 180 different countries around the world. Some of those countries.
He's saying pass. He'll pass on this question.
Well, I will pass on. I'm trying to.
You're reminding me of the succession of Labour MPs that have come on this programme since the election who don't seem to have an opinion on.
No, I do. I do have it. I appreciate
but
that.
You have apart from this. I can grant you that.
I do want to say two quick things.
All right.
And that is one. It is what differentiates us from Republicans overseas, in that they don't have those same restrictions, so they are free to talk about.
We're not collectivist. We have free speech.
So, say what you will, they're a political action committee. So that's
okay.
So be that as may, this down.
You sound jealous.
John, we welcome you at any time.
Anyway,
you are welcome. I told you.
But the other thing to say is, while I can't speak about foreign affairs in the way that you would like for me to speak about foreign affairs, those that I look to and trust who are experts in international relations, like Governor Milley and Masters and a number of others who have served as head of the armed forces and have served with Donald Trump very closely, have said that this guy is not fit to be president. He doesn't understand the role of the president. He doesn't understand foreign relations, and he runs them as if he were a 7-year-old who gets flattered by any leader that comes along and wants to have him in his pocket.
But his foreign policy last time was not without any success, was it?
Tell me.
Well, the Abraham Accords, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
4 years
the
of no
instant
new
one.
wars.
America didn't get involved in any. Sorry, I'm parroting.
Sorry about that.
I mean, it wasn't all a disaster.
No,
I
Jay
mean,
wants to hear.
he
But
did
a
try
soft clock
to
is right
build
twice a
relations
day.
with North Korea. Now, okay, that didn't particularly work out, but I thought that was actually quite an admirable thing to do.
Well, I guess that was the one that sticks out in my mind, of course, is his attempt where he said he would solve the issue with North Korea in a day, and that didn't work out very well. So I think it's a very mixed record at best. But the biggest problem with Trump, it's not just about foreign affairs. It is I think he is, we've talked about him and all the attention that he's getting. I think he is very successful as an entertainer. He is quite the campaigner, but he has been a train wreck as a leader.
Jennifer, let's remind ourselves of the question. Who would be the best president for the UK and the special relationship? Now, if he goes ahead and puts 20% on all UK exports, that would indicate that he wouldn't be very good for the special relationship.
Sure, Jay. You can rest. You can rest in knowing that Donald Trump would actually be better for the UK special relationship. And he's an Anglophile. His mother was Scottish. He likes this country. With regards to Kamala Harris, she couldn't even be bothered to go see Keir Starmer when he came all the way to the United States of America. Trump held a dinner for him and David Lammy, might I add, for 2 hours, even though David Lammy had said things that we can't even repeat on this station. With regards to the Paris Climate Accord, you know what's going to happen, and you know what the United States of America is going to do with regards to climate change is put manufacturing back in our country. So we won't be, buying oil from
at the
overseas.
expense of manufacturing in our country.
Well, we're talking about, the climate accord. And then with regards to the tariffs, Trump uses those tariffs. Nobody likes tariffs. However, what he does...
Well, he says he loves them.
Well, he uses them as a negotiating tool.
I mean, I
give
get
you
it,
an
use it
example.
against China, but don't use it against your NATO allies, for example.
But no, he uses them as a negotiating tool, like he did with Mexico, to help stop the inflow of illegal immigrants into the United States. So he's not going to just slap blanket tariffs on everyone. And with regards to Ukraine situation, I think he's done the United Kingdom a favor and all of the other NATO countries by saying, hey, we cannot continue to fund, and it's not just the money, it's the munitions we can't continue to supply. So you guys have to up your game with regards to paying the fair share in NATO. I think he's helping it. But no, and he loves this country. He owns Turnberry. We agreed with that with, our friend Alex Salmond, who's no longer with us. So, no, Jay, Trump will be the better person for the special relationship. Sorry. He won't be at the back of the queue.
I think Trump is erratic. He, as you said, all the things John said, I completely agree. And I think we still have some vestiges of norms in the way that we... the political culture here, while also incredibly embarrassing in many ways and prone to ludicrousness. I don't think the sort of, to use the Kamala word, the vibe thing is going to match well between Starmer and Trump. I can't see that going well at all. It took a particular type, like a Boris Johnson, to kind of vibe with Trump. So I think there's no way, apart from on a whim, where he has an idea of a Scottish idyll.
Maybe he makes Nigel Farage the ambassador. That could help.
I mean, there are a few personalities.
Decides who the ambassador is.
Yeah, sorry.
I think that's unlikely.
The reality is that the UK is not going to be front, and is not going to be a very esteemed partner for certainly not for Kamala, and the Trump thing will just not mesh at all with our current government. I mean, I think there's still there's a sort of tendency to massively downplay our importance. And so I don't want to say we are completely consigned to irrelevance. We are of no importance. That's not true. We are probably the most important in Europe from the perspective of the US.
But
that doesn't mean. But that doesn't mean that we've done much to help ourselves in the American eyes, I think, recently.
Could I just very quickly come back to this, because the one thing I could say, I would like to make more of a contribution to this part of the conversation. So just to point out,
we're going to go to a break soon.
Just to point out what the former economist from the Bank of England said on one of the morning talk shows not too long ago, that Donald Trump would be very bad for the relationship because tariffs, as he said, would drive up, among other things, drive up interest rates, decrease activity and probably lead to a recession, which when America, creates a recession, the rest of the world catches cold, or whatever. I'm mixing a number of metaphors there. But the idea was that a strong, economically strong America, which would, following the plan that Kamala Harris has set out for economic proposals, I think would be very beneficial because of the strength of America, the success of America. Rising tide raises all boats.
Right, let's go to a break. It's 8:49.
This is LBC.
First.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
8:52. John Scardino from Democrats Abroad UK is here. Jennifer Ewing from Republicans Overseas UK. Lord Kim Darroch and Zoe Strimpel from the Sunday Telegraph. James in Hitchin is on the line. Hello, James.
Hi. Are celebrity endorsements a luxury or a necessity in winning a presidential election?
Now, George Clooney has provided his voice to a new advert which reminds men that no one will ever know how they actually voted, so they can tell their friends they voted for Trump but actually vote for Harris instead. Interesting message. Zoe?
Yeah, I think they're both a luxury and a necessity. I mean, it's obviously a very American-specific thing. Someone like a Taylor Swift coming out and endorsing Kamala, I mean, this is huge. These people have huge influence. I actually think it's irritating. I know we're supposed to think it's fine, and yes, they're allowed to, but yeah, these people don't know anything more about this stuff than anyone else. But yeah, that's the way American presidential politics is.
And Jennifer, your father, J.R. Ewing, he would definitely have been voted Trump.
He would. And my neighbour at home in California, Clint Eastwood, definitely would probably. But look, no,
is he really your neighbour?
Yeah, he is.
Get him on the show.
I told you, Alex Salmon wanted me to introduce him to him. But yeah, we will get him on the show. But no, in all seriousness, I think they don't mean anything. Taylor Swift actually didn't move the needle for Kamala Harris. Hillary Clinton tried this years ago, didn't move the needle for her. And actually, when I see all of these rallies that Kamala Harris is doing with all these famous people, you know, Beyonce and Usher and J-Lo, it's these one percenters. I'm sorry, but my voting needs, and I think probably the average American who's trying to fill up their gas tank or pay for their groceries, how is that relatable at all? It's not. So no, I think it's a total distraction.
John?
I'm really pleased with this question because I get to use the phrase "bad money" in this phrase, which I think is
in what context?
I know where this is going.
Is a great opportunity.
Don't misquote.
There was a fantastic piece in the New York Times. Forgive me, with Bad Bunny and Rita Moreno and Lin-Manuel Miranda, 3 Puerto Ricans who have had outstanding artistic careers. Rita Moreno won every award there was out there. Miranda, of course, created one of the most patriotic theater productions of all time, Hamilton. And Bad Bunny, I think, just has a great name. So, you know, they all came out.
As opposed to Bugs Bunny.
As opposed to Bugs Bunny. But they all came out and said, look, you know, we're from Puerto Rico. We don't really appreciate the denigration that's been going on. But yes, we do support Kamala Harris. I think that was an effective, yes, some of these endorsements they're entertaining, and it's, you know, anybody can express their view and who they're supporting. But I do think when it's used effectively, as it was in this particular piece, to highlight something that is significant in the campaign, I think works quite well.
I think it's insulting to Puerto Ricans that they're going to change their vote because some roast comedian said an off-color joke at a Trump rally that the Trump campaign's, you know, moved away from. You're going to change your vote just because of that? That's insulting to Puerto Ricans.
But the candidate himself then repeated it, basically, by, you know, references to garbage and that kind of thing.
But that's
and
because
the whole
Puerto Rico has a garbage problem, so it's taken out of context.
So, I mean, the whole rally
Biden's the one that called the Trump supporters garbage.
The whole rally itself in Madison Square Garden was full of all that. It wasn't just one incident. That was the problem.
Do you remember, Kim, in 1983 when there was a similar rally at Wembley when Kenny Everett took to the stage in support of the Conservatives and shouted, "Let's bomb Russia! Let's throw Michael Foot's stick away."
I do remember that now.
Similar vibes from that. See, I can get with the lingo.
Well, I have 30 seconds.
You can.
I'm very sceptical about the value of celebrity endorsements, and maybe my views just coloured by 2016 when Hillary Clinton had any number of them at every campaign rally she did. And the story was that they would turn up to listen to Bruce Springsteen do his songs, and then if she spoke after the songs, they'd all leave when she was speaking.
Yeah. See Beyonce about a week ago, same thing.
Right. Kelly in Bristol says, are you concerned about the platform Elon Musk has been given over the past few weeks? Bit of background to this. His $1 million giveaway to voters who sign him pro-Trump petitions across the 7 swing states is facing legal action in Pennsylvania. His lawyer has said today that it is legal because it's not a random giveaway and that instead recipients must fulfill contractual obligations to serve as a spokesperson for Musk's Political Action Committee. Jennifer.
Sure. So it is illegal to pay somebody to vote, and it is illegal to pay somebody to register to vote. However, that's not what's going on here. What Elon was doing is with his America's Political Action Committee was highlighting the Constitution, in particular the First Amendment, which is free speech, which Elon, that's his big issue, is anti-censorship, free speech, and of course the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms. I realize that's very controversial in this country, but no, trust me, Elon has enough lawfare thrown at him for his multitude of companies that if he would have looked into this before.
Really? I find that answer is very hard to accept because the requirement for participating in the contest was that you had to be registered to vote. He has been approached about, he's been warned about this. And worst of all, the people that accepted the prize, they themselves could be under prosecution and have been told and recommended that they not spend the money that they've won because they could very well be having to pay that back.
Either of you two want to contribute to this? Or?
Just to say, I think Elon Musk looks increasingly ridiculous in his activity on the campaign, and this idea was just nuts.
Would you have liked him if he was supporting Kamala Harris?
No, I would have thought he looked ridiculous there
I
as well.
find him to be the most irritating person on X, his own platform. So yeah, I think
there's
he's
a lot of
completely...
competition for that. Have you seen my tweet?
Well, there's a lot of evil and terribleness, but I mean, given that he owns the thing, you'd expect, there's an added kind of exponential irritation. He's completely, he should just, it's such a shame with him. He should just stick to his amazing skill with certain kinds of business and invention, and all of his blabbermouth stuff and all of his schemes to do with politics are just a huge,
Right, our fun question comes from Jules in Dundee. Trump got in a garbage truck last week. Michael Dukakis got in a tank in 1988. Which over-the-top vehicle would you use for your campaign and why? John Scardino.
I would use the Elon Musk truck because it's, and I would put the candidate I would put in it is Donald Trump because it's a vehicle that is all promise and no delivery, or as they say in Texas, all hat and no cattle.
Kim.
I was going to say that. I think, and this is not a funny, I'm afraid, I would have a top-of-the-range Range Rover because I remember when I was young there was British car industry, and this is about the only successful bit of it left, and you can sell every Range Rover made 3 or 4 times. Chinese buy them in vast quantities, so do the Americans, so do we. They're the last great car that we make. And
I bet you had one as ambassador, didn't you?
No, I had a Bentley.
Did you?
Yes.
Tough life.
Always wanted a Bentley.
Other cars are available.
I would choose a time machine because I think it could take you places.
To go back to 1984.
To go back to 1984 when it was Ronald Reagan, exactly, and all those wonderful things happened. No, I'd take a time machine and go back and learn from the past.
Sorry.
I'd go for a refurbed Concorde because I think it would anger all the right people. It'd be very nice to travel around in.
Right, now tomorrow's panel includes the brother of the US Senator and twice Democratic presidential nomination seeker Bernie Sanders, Larry Sanders. No, not that one. The chair of Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson.
Hey.
So your boss?
He's not my boss, but I guess he's my colleague, even though we don't get paid. So
now the Atlantic Council's senior fellow Elizabeth Braw and the veteran American broadcaster Tom Rivers. They'll all be joining me tomorrow evening for Cross Question at 8. Thank you to all 4 of you. Pleasure to have you with us this evening. Now, what do you think about a 4-day week? I've got a vested interest here because I'm sort of on a 4-day week, and I think it's a really good thing. However, if I was an employer, would I think it was a good thing? Well, 1,000 workers in the UK will get extra time off with no loss of pay in the first official pilot by the 4-day week campaign under the Labour government. The British Society for Immunology and Crate Brewery in Hackney, East London, are among the businesses to have joined the latest trial, which is being led by the 4-day week campaign as it launches today. So I want to know what you think the consequences for you and your organisation of a 4-day week would be. 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, university tuition fees in England will rise for the first time in 8 years from April. Bridget Phillipson says they will increase in line with inflation to more than £9,500. She claims she's securing the future of higher education. But the newly appointed Shadow Education Secretary, Laura Trott, isn't impressed.
Not content with pushing up the cost of living for everyone with an inflationary budget and pushing down wages with a national insurance increase, we are now in a situation whereby students will suffer from the first inflationary increase in a number of years at a time when students can least afford it.
There's major disruption to flights in and out of Barcelona, affecting thousands of British passengers as heavy rain continues. Flooding in eastern Spain is now known to have killed more than 200 people. Among them, British couple Don and Terry Turner, who went missing following extreme weather in the Valencia region. Their daughter, Ruth O'Loughlin's paid tribute to them.
Everybody knows my mum and dad